think the fact that it's simple is honestly a good thing. I think most people are overcomplicating it and thinking it too much. There was not a lot of overthinking. And we also just had this kind of blind faith around if we put out enough good free information and we get people bought in on our mission, which is to make people healthier, the internet's going to tell us what we should be doing to monetize that or be able to support ourselves. And when you look at 2025, how true is that, man?
The last 3 years has been the most fun, the most challenging, the most sacrifice that I've ever had to make. It's this period of looking back and being like, man, we kind of went for it, man. And like, it hasn't worked out perfectly, but I do think that the visualization that comes to mind is just roots being developed and how long it takes those roots to be established before they actually start growing up. I feel like we've just been in this period where we're being formed.
Yes.
And I think that period of being formed is just, it's so exciting because it really shows that, you know, there's just constant levels, constant iterations, constant growth that is being compounded and stacked on itself. We're kind of establishing what the next step is going to be, but I do really feel like we're like really ready to take off, which is exciting. Brother, how we doing?
Good, man. Happy Friday.
Dude, happy Friday.
Yeah.
What a beautiful day. Just wrapping up a good week. Excited to record. I feel like we haven't done a podcast together in a little while, just one-on-one.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since our last solo rip, but it seems like people really enjoy them, and they're also just fun, and they're really organic and authentic.
Yeah, I've been telling you, like, we need to be doing more of these solo, like, individual, like you doing a podcast, me doing a podcast, of us just doing like a monologue, talking into the mic about a topic that we care about. And I've done 2 of them so far, and it's been interesting just switching up the formats and just pressing into some of that creativity in a different way. Like, I think we've both gotten to the point where we get really excited about interviewing guests and being the person who's asking the right questions, but actually being the person who's bringing the full extent of the conversation is a totally different artistic creative muscle.
Yeah.
And so I've been excited about that kind of format shift, adding that into kind of the repertoire of things that we're doing with the pod. So I'm excited for you to get the chance to do that. That's kind of been one thing that, you know, it's been interesting the last few weeks, teasing that out a little bit.
Yeah, it's been cool seeing you prep for that and just the invigorated feeling that you've had afterwards. Because like you said, they're really, I think a lot of people don't realize this, when you have guests or you even have like a co-hosted show, there's pros and cons to everything, but you definitely have a life raft for sure having a co-host, where it's like, if I'm having an off day or something, I could really rely on you. But also like in an interview style podcast, you're really just, it's just the art of like asking good questions and then closing your mouth and letting the guest do a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to see you just like own that, and it seems like that first episode got some really good feedback too, and I'm excited to see what comes from that series of us just like mixing in these different things into our repertoire, because you always have to be evolving, because what worked, you know, when we started in 2022 is not going to work in 2025, and things are evolving so quickly that even things that you're seeing work 6 months ago aren't going to necessarily work today too.
Totally.
It's fun.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I feel like just the one thing I feel like the podcast has given us that steady stream of creative output, but it's also one of the things that I feel like we haven't necessarily innovated too much on, just in terms of like how we're putting formats out, like even in just the long form capacity, speaking to, you know, there's a million different things we could do with clips, but from just like a long form standpoint, we've really just stuck with one format. And I think it's been great. Like, this is our first soiree into like any creative pursuit. And so for us, like, I think we both really enjoy just like getting down and having an interview with somebody else. Like, it's really is an exciting form of content, because typically you're very excited to have the person on the show, and you're so eager to ask them questions. Like, I remember, you know, sitting down with Paul Check, I talked to him for 3.5 hours. And I'm like, dude, this guy, I've literally listened to this guy, his health and wellness content for 10, 15 years at this point. I listened to his podcast with Tim Ferriss and all these other people who I've taken so much from. And so just to be able to like sit down with people like that, like, I don't want to speak. I want to just ask the questions. And I know you feel the same way. So it's like, it is cool kind of just transitioning though into like, you know, somewhat of more of a authority, and thinking about, okay, like, you know, when we first started, which for anyone who's listening to the pod for the first time, we started writing back in 2021, and we were doing long form written content. And that was like, I don't know, there was something cool about just that first like taste of creative success.
Definitely. Yeah. I know that you were saying, I think this theme of this episode for the listener is us almost reflecting and hashing out just some stories and almost like watermark moments for the podcast the last couple of years that really compounded to the point that we're at now. And so I think there's going to be a lot of value for the listener with us just kind of pinballing back and forth on just things that we did the first, from the first 6 months to 3 years into the show that are obviously very memorable, but it's responsible for why we're at where we're at now. And obviously I know a lot of you that listen to the show, you have these incredible dreams and aspirations, and there's just some things that we've learned along the way that we want to talk about and rehash that I think will be really helpful for you as a listener.
Yeah. All right. First question to you. Can you tell me just when we were living together, so October 2021, we are preparing for this Ironman. You're also drafting up in kind of like on the side, you're drafting up this Word document of your story, like your healing story. And later on, a few months later, you end up publishing that story. And I'd love to just hear your weeks, months, just like the details of you putting that together and hitting send, and just how that really felt, like getting that story out of your mind into the Word doc and then hitting send and seeing it actually perform well.
Definitely. I think like one of the defining themes of our show, particularly in the early stages, it was really just momentum, and momentum initially through just change and environment. So Harry being in Boston for almost a decade, myself being in New York City for about 5 years up to that point, we just got ourselves out of that city, signed up for Ironman Mont Tremblant up in Canada. That got canceled. We signed up for Ironman Waco, and that put us in Austin in an Airbnb for a couple months. And that's really where we like honed our friendship and also really like uncovered our passion for health and wellness, the desire to create something. And so for me, when we were living in Austin, you had quit your job at this point, and I was just seeing you really just tinker behind the scenes. You were exploring a chief of staff internship, a chief of staff role with Justin Mayers that ended up forming into a business opportunity you were pursuing with him. And then on the side, you were really involved in the Bitcoin Twitter space, which was pulling you into the health and wellness space. And so you were showing me a lot of these accounts. And then I also remember the first blog post that you wrote. Was it called Houston, We Have a Problem?
Houston, We Have a Problem.
And you were basically just like depicting a lot of the things that you were seeing in regards to the United States' metabolic health epidemic, things that we were doing to our soil that you deemed as incorrect. And I was just reading this, and I had known you as obviously I always thought of you as a very creative and driven person. But up until that point, you were in a real estate private equity job. I didn't know that you had this amazing ability to write and articulate your thoughts, putting pen to paper. And so that for me was really interesting, where I was like, wow, Harry has this amazing skill set. This is so incredible. I'm learning things through this blog post. And it was cool as a friend to see you doing that. And then there was also just momentum, like I was saying, being in this new city. At one point, you had decided that Austin was going to be your forever home, or at least for the indefinite future. So you got yourself an apartment. We moved from the Airbnb to your apartment. You had your bedroom. I was sleeping on the floor, which was incredible.
In between there, this is a total side point just for you and me to laugh, but in between there, maybe the worst apartment anyone could ever imagine staying
absolutely
for 3 days.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I thought I was going to die.
I know.
I thought I was going to die.
That was tough for sure. But so you get your forever apartment, and I was sleeping on your floor. I slept amazing on your floor. I remember checking my Garmin sleep score. My REM was the highest that it had ever been, by the way. So,
you were superhuman.
So anyway, but there was just so much creative vim and energy and just excitement and like the novelty of being in a new city and just seeing you chase this thing that was really unknown, but you were so passionate about it, and you were you had this craftsman mentality. And so that made me reflect on, the health journey that I had been on, just defeating ulcerative colitis UC holistically through this carnivore diet. And I'd had people say before, like, dude, there's something to this story that you need to get out into the world. And I had draft written it a couple times in New York. I think it was 3 times in particular. I actually tried to write a blog story on my healing journey, but I just put so much pressure on myself. And I didn't know what the path forward was because I was working this tech sales job and I was following a lot of creators online. I was so into the health and wellness space. I just didn't know how to like generate that upward thrust of a rocket ship to puncture towards what I wanted. I just didn't know how I would get there. So I would write the blog post and I would get so discouraged and overwhelmed. I would delete it. I remember I wrote it on paper one time. I crumpled it up, threw it into a basket. And then there was something different about you and I leaving that Austin experience, that living experience together in 2022, because we essentially made a commitment of like, there's something special between the two of us. And we just kind of made this commitment to explore what that would look like. And so I actually moved to San Diego because I had a vision in my head that I just wanted to be near the beach for a period of time. Austin at that point was amazing, but I didn't know if it was going to be my forever home. I just really wanted to do California, especially being from the East Coast. And you were the one that said, hey man, I really think that there's something to your healing story that the world needs to hear. And there's something about it that the way that you said it, it resonated with me. And I remember being in San Diego, I was by myself, living alone at the time, didn't know anyone. And my apartment had this really nice like business work center. And I remember just sitting there with my computer, starting to feel that same overwhelm. And then there was a shift that had happened where I remember thinking, and it was definitely God, just saying to myself, everything that you want is on the other side of just writing this blog post and just pushing it out into the world. And so I sent it to you. You gave me some good feedback on it. And at that point, I had been consuming a ton of content on Twitter. And I just had this like natural eye for the way that thread, like how a body of a thread could be written, like understanding how hooks are. And I was like, I think this could actually be a good thread on Twitter. And so I took the skeleton of that blog, I put it into a thread. I scheduled it for 5 a.m. Pacific time the next night. And then I went to bed and had like just this very exciting feeling about it. And then at that time, we were part of Soul Bra's community. I think it was Soul Club.
Oh, yeah.
And this was the early days of Soul Club. So there were only probably like 50 to 100 members at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, if there's ever a chance for Soul Bra to see something that I've written, it's probably like posting it in his community. So the thread goes live, doesn't really do anything. And then I posted it in the community. He saw it, thought there was something there, retweeted it. And then it just started to do numbers where I think it got 2,000 likes, like a couple 100,000 impressions.
Wow.
And I think I gained my first like 500, 1,000 followers. And that was like, that really was like a shark tasting blood for the first time. And this seed of potential that was actually becoming something real around like, man, you're not just going to, you don't need to just be a guy that is an observer. Like you can really have a voice in this space. And that for me, that's where everything really changed.
So what gave you the confidence to keep going after that first one? Was it just that you said the initial taste, the blood in the water? Was it that first feeling of just, oh my gosh, I can actually like put something out there that adds value to other people's lives and build this skill set that I didn't even really know that I had?
I think there's probably 2 parts. I think number one, I think building this like dream of the Meat Mafia, it felt so good to actually chip away at the conversations that we were having in Austin. And those conversations that we were having in Austin, that was really like that was like a decade-long individual journey that we had each had separately that kind of materialized into ourselves coming together, where we both always felt like we were meant for something more. And I think so many men are dying to just put something out into the world that's uniquely their own. So I think just the exhilaration of creating something, getting this instant feedback on the internet, people being responsive to it, that was incredible. And then secondly, I think my safeguard was having someone like you that was a business partner at the time like that. I respond really well to that accountability. So I'm like, well, Harry's given me his word. I'm giving Harry my word. We're saying we're going to do this. There's no option. Then we're just going to figure this out together. And for me, the confidence of having just a really good friend sitting next to me was that was really the catalyst that was the difference maker between myself in New York not hitting post versus it hitting post, and then being the catalyst to kind of help put us in the seat now.
Yeah, there's something special. I think about that period between January 2022 and June 2022, where we were fully anonymous on Twitter. You and I were both really leaning into our basically like newfound friendship, both realized that there was a ton of things that we wanted to improve on and basically develop within ourselves that for years, maybe we had just kind of let be dormant, potential that we hadn't fully realized yet in our lives. And I think that 6-month period in 2022, that first half because the first half was very focused on writing, and I think it then evolved into the actual podcast. But through that, it was basically an evolution of both of our shared interest of wanting to create something. And I think we both realized that one, we had some level of a writing talent or some level of just an ability to articulate things in a way that captured people's attention in the health and wellness space. And then two, like this drive, like I just remember there being this insatiable, like quench, like we were like just going after it because we were so hungry to see just this thing compound. And it felt like it was compounding every day. Like everything that we did had some level of like a response, a return, and it was stacking on top of each other so quickly. And there's something just so, man, like when life is moving at a speed that it's just like such a naturally good cadence where you're like, man, everything I'm doing, it's working. It's like when you're working out and you're seeing gains happen in real time.
Yes. Yeah. The feelings that come to mind for me, that time period in particular, it was just like purity. It was presence. It was single-mindedness. It was like, it was essentially, it felt like, almost like you'd imagine like what the early stages of Walt Disney felt like when he was like drawing up cartoons for this crazy vision of Mickey Mouse that became Walt Disney. It's like this like methodical obsession towards this vision in your head that you truly believe that you could turn into reality. And the only way that you're going to turn it into reality is like putting that pen on paper and like creating your art and publishing your art into the world. That's really what it felt like, where it was the first time where, I wasn't focused on like money or finances or friendships or doing this or what is that person doing. It was like literally all I wanted to do was just research, write more with you, us get feedback on it, have conversations about Meet Mafia. That obviously like progressed into the podcast, which we'll obviously talk about in this episode. But I think a lot of founders, they experience that purity and that single-mindedness, and then their businesses start to get way more complex, and they lose that feeling or they get bogged down by these other things and they forget why they started in the first place. And like they stop doing the things that create that purity that feels like play that they could do forever.
Totally. Was there something about having the character, because we were both anonymous, like was there something about having Salazzo as this character that you were building, this muse that's like, it's getting put out there and there's every new thing that you add to like your Twitter feed, it's building into this new character, this new creation. I mean, that's your Mickey Mouse, is Salazzo.
Yeah, we definitely had a progression, right? Where it was, we were anonymous on X first. We didn't show our faces. We didn't talk into a camera. We didn't do short form reels on Instagram of us like speaking some 30-second talk track to catch the audience through a hook and go viral. It was anonymity first, written content, anonymous through a podcast, interviewing people, showing our faces, doing more solo interviews where we were kind of calling the shots and giving our own perspective. Then it was going public. Then it was starting a brand. Like there was a very clear progression. And I think for both of us, I know for me, it gave me this like progressive wave of confidence where I think a lot of people don't know how to get started because they're trying to mimic someone else's form of content that doesn't feel authentic to them. And I'm not the right person. I can't tell you how to find it outside of like, you have to experiment with different mediums until you find that thing that really sticks and feels authentic to you that you enjoy doing and put out into the world.
Is there anything that you realized about writing in particular that you were drawn to? Just being able to like, just massage some of those sentences together until it's like, man, that's the one. That's the sentence I need to go with.
I think the beauty of Twitter before it became X, when it was a character limit, is like it forced me to just get rid of all the fluff in regards to the way that I was writing. And I think that also translated to the way that I was speaking. And I still think about that a lot with the podcast too, where like even in the early days of the show, I remember just throwing out words and vocabulary and vernacular that made myself seem a lot smarter than I really was, where the best episodes that we've recorded are just trying to explain something that a 5-year-old can understand.
Yeah.
I think what was really fun for me from a writing perspective was like what you learn is like the hook is 99% of the battle, particularly on X and Twitter. And a lot of that's actually through that's true. It's the equivalent of a YouTube thumbnail or the first 5 seconds of an Instagram short. It's like, what's the perfect combination of things that I could say or pictures that I could put that really hooks an audience in that will let them consume this really good information. So that was a really fun journey around like playing around with the different hooks and trying to find the perfect thing to get someone to stop scrolling, click, consume, and then follow and then engage with what we were saying. That was really fun.
Totally. So for anyone listening, just to recap a bit, Brett and I moved down to Austin October 2021. We're running this Ironman together. I end up signing a lease down here. Brett's living on my floor until the end of the year. We end up starting writing online, posting stuff on Twitter, posting blog posts. We get into this creative process that we didn't even really sign up for, realize what we were really doing, but we just wanted to put stuff out there, and we started telling stories that we thought were interesting and relatable. And then within the first 3 months of 2022, basically our sole focus up until March was let's just keep writing and just like compound on this success that we were having, because what we experienced was you put that article out, it did really well. And then we started writing threads on what had happened in the food system, things that had broken decades ago that we're now living through, these consequences that people don't lift their heads up enough, or they don't look backwards and ask questions about things that have happened and just become normal. And we realized that there was tons of things that had just become normal in society, specifically with food, that needed to be addressed. And so we just started writing about these topics. By March, it was clear that things were going to be happening for our accounts. We had, a few thousand followers. If we kept going, something could happen. And then we decide, hey, let's start a podcast. I want to hear your thoughts on just like thinking about that moment of let's change up the medium. Let's change up the format in terms of how we're putting information out there. What was like going through your head when we started talking about that?
Do you mind if I reverse the question back on you? Because
totally.
I feel like because you were the one that had the idea for it.
Yeah.
So I would love to get your perspective, and then I'll answer it too. But
yeah, I think the first thought for me was it was the end of COVID. This was kind of like my logic through the whole thing was basically it was the end of COVID, and we were seeing a lot of people get deplatformed from Twitter. There was like this very weird period during Twitter where people were getting removed from the platform for saying things about vaccination, saying things about what had happened during COVID. And we were on the fringe, I don't think that we were saying anything that was too abrasive, but like there was definitely a chance that this momentum, this information that we were pouring into X, my chief concern was like, you and I are investing literally everything we have. Like, I'm not making any money at this point. You have your job, but it's like, I'm spending all my time investing into this one medium. And if we grow and then these people pull a plug on us, like, dang, like we don't really own anything. And so my thought was, hey, let's like diversify. And if we actually want to get into the health and wellness space, we're growing a reputation in terms of the things that we care about. People are, whether we've built credibility or at least just built a reputation for putting good information out there, we had put signal out into the universe and people were responding to it. And so we had interesting people starting to follow us. So I'm like, dude, we should connect with these people. Like these people are people that we've looked up to for a long time. And maybe there's a chance that, if we build a relationship here, something good could happen. So those were man, I wish I could say that there was a bigger vision, but it was really just like, I think the initial thought was mostly probably 80% was let's diversify how we're putting information out so that we can own more of the medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's simple is honestly a good thing. I think most people are overcomplicating it and thinking it too much. Like I just remember 2022, so much of it was like, you had an idea. Okay, boom, that fits in my gut. Okay, let's figure out how to do this. Or like another idea, you agree with it. Okay, boom, let's figure out how to do this. Let's get that. Like
Totally.
there just was not a lot of overthinking. It was just like controlled force and momentum towards the thing that we wanted, and that we kind of like brute force that to like break out of this echo chamber to like actually have a voice in the space. And we also just had this kind of blind faith around if we put out enough good free information and we get people bought in on our mission, which is to make people healthier, the internet's going to tell us what we should be doing to monetize that or be able to support ourselves. And when you look at 2025, how true is that, man? Like there's like accounting firms that are crushing it literally just by having a presence on social media. Like I'd love to play this in 2035 and just reflect on this too, because it's like I think people are almost going to view your presence online in a similar way to like your net worth within the next 10 years. Like that's how vital it's going to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think too, just thinking about the podcast when we were first starting, those decisions, like looking back, I'm like, I was obsessed with podcasting in college. It was one of the most important outlets for me to going through college. I think I was kind of like a decent student. I took college more seriously than most people I knew, but I didn't do as well as I probably should have given the amount of effort I put in. But the thing that I felt best about was I had a natural curiosity for like things that were going on. Like I gravitated towards John Lee Dumas's podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire. I think it's John Dumas, Entrepreneurs on Fire. His podcast was incredible, like 20-minute podcast with all these different entrepreneurs. I absolutely loved his stuff. Listened to Tim Ferriss regularly. Listened to a few other podcasts very regularly, Rogan. And looking back, I'm realizing, I'm like, dude, I just like loved podcasting. So not that like what calculus wasn't going into the decision. I wasn't like, man, I really like am dying to be associated like someone like Tim Ferriss or, but I think that like subconsciously that drove some of the decision. Yeah. I think you liked podcasting too. I mean, it's part of your healing story, like listening to that podcast.
Yeah. Like Jocko, I remember listening to Jocko a bunch in college and obviously Rogan too. And I even remember like when I first started working and I was commuting for work and like even driving in the car, just I would like always have some type of a podcast and just like constantly consuming information, getting exposure to new people and different ideas around like health and wellness and just the world and politics in general. And like it's a lot of like these people that you've learned from virtually that you've never met have kind of like shaped our worldviews in a lot of ways and like opened up this whole gateway, which is ultimately why we're here. So it makes sense where it's like you absolutely love consuming it. This thing has changed your life. Well, now you have your own passion and niche you want to own. So yeah, you should do that through the same medium that you love to consume. You should create.
I have a feeling. So you said that you growing up were like big into YouTube.
Love it. Obsessed.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I think that once we start putting YouTube content out, we're both going to be completely hooked in terms of like wanting to just be more, creators in the long form sense of putting out a 20-minute video that's, our thoughts on health, your healing story, things like that. I mean, podcasting is beautiful, but I do think that like YouTube, the visual component, the storytelling component, it crosses a different chasm. You're able to use more creative tools to tell the story. There's something beautiful about podcasting, just listening to someone's conversation. I love that. But then I also love like layering some of the visual things that you can do. I think YouTube's such a powerful platform. So that's I'm gonna call a shot there. I think YouTube might be next.
I think
the next frontier.
YouTube is the next frontier.
Dude, I think so.
I spend the most time on YouTube out of any platform by far.
I know we've had this conversation a million times, but I think that going from consumer to creator is so important and such a cool experience. But it's easy to like put the consumer hat back on and be more of a consumer than a creator. So I do think it's like, as we build Noble, as we build the Meat Mafia, just continuing to put that creator hat on in different areas and just testing stuff out is, I think, really important.
Definitely. Yeah. It's a good lesson for business too. Like just reflecting on the ways that what are the things that you like to eat? How are you actually like getting a lot of this content in, just like analyzing your own consumption habits, like that could be very formative towards the way that you put out your own content or the type of business that you create. Like there's so many founders that we've talked to that even in CPG that were like, hey, I wish this thing, this like honey electrolyte gel existed. So I just created it and it's crushing because thousands of other people wish that it existed too.
Yeah, I think the answer is typically not, it's extracting the truth instead of like adding to, like, hey, I need to go learn, or like, hey, I need to go like create some new skill set, and then like then I'm going to build a new product. Like you and I aren't starting a SaaS company. We're building a protein powder company because we've been consuming supplements.
Yes.
We've been in the gym. We've been training for decades at this point. It's so obvious to us now looking backwards that we were supposed to be a part of this. We're supposed to be doing this stuff all along. And I do think that like the truth is typically just something that's being like extracted.
Definitely.
It's more of an extraction process. Look for the clues in your past. I think that's like such a good, such a good roadmap for what you should be doing in the future. Is just like, what are you naturally drawn to? What gets you excited?
Definitely. Yeah, we definitely lose those things a lot. Like I remember you saying back in 2022, like in another life, you could have seen yourself being like a scientist almost, which I thought was so interesting. I don't even know if you remember saying that to me.
Yeah, you've brought that up a few times. Yeah, no, I think I would have forgotten about it if you brought it up once, and I was like, yeah, I remember saying it, but I think it like left an impact on you, which is interesting. And I do think that like, yeah, I really did always. There was just basically a 2-year period where I worked out with guys who truly understood biomechanics in a way that was advanced at the time, but the way that they were teaching it to me, they were imparting their knowledge. I mean, man, I was 16 learning from guys who basically had a PhD in how the body worked, and I was like their guinea pig. They were literally I was like, they were testing on me.
Yeah.
They were like testing new styles of workouts, and I loved it. And so like for me, there is probably a part of me that wants to go, like truly wants to go back and like just get more involved in uncover some more of that truth in my upbringing and in my past, because there was such a natural, I mean, I lived at this gym. I was there, whether it was just to like go after school, it would be like, buddy would say, hey, you want to hang out on Fridays? Like, no, I'm going to this gym, whether I'm working out or just like foam rolling or stretching or talking to these guys and just learning about where they're getting their food from. I mean, like one of the guys got his eggs, his milk, his cheese from an Amish farm in Pennsylvania. It's like, these were like where the seeds of my interests were being planted.
Definitely. Yeah. It's like you have these like incredibly unique parts to you. And a lot of these things, like God reveals those to you, like when you're a kid or you're an adolescent, and typically like society, higher education, you do get it beat out of you. But like, that's where I think that's where like the real context clues are. Like, what are the things that I really love to do as a kid, or like, what are the things that I like to do that everyone else thought was crazy?
Yeah.
Like there's like that, your secret sauce kind of lies in that stuff.
Yeah.
But like even now, like what are the things that you secretly love that everyone, like that no one else likes or thinks is weird? And like even with like, I've always been like, dude, I just love, like finding ways to get my foot in the door and building relationships and just like adding value to people, and for no reason why, just like connecting people together. But then I also really like nutrition. It's like, oh, well, that's materialized into like a business development role for our beef protein powder company, Noble. Like this eclectic combination of characteristics, like you can literally piece those things together in 2025 and have this like pretty darn cool thing. Like anyone's capable of it. I really believe that.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. All right, I want to shift a little bit. So going back, so we start the podcast. Month 1, I remember first episode we record, the files get lost. Brian Lenskis, first episode of the pod, we recorded it. No dice. Riverside lost, or something happened.
Did it really?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
Whole thing. But then we re-recorded.
Wow.
Yeah. So we lose the first episode. That was our first test. We passed because we kept going. I think we recorded 4 episodes in the first month. And then the second month, we were just like, as hard as we possibly could, trying to record as many podcasts as we possibly could. And I think the second month was the most important month in either of our careers in this whole entrepreneurial game. I would say, I think it was May. No, sorry. It was April. I think April 2022 was the most important month that we've ever had as a podcast host, as entrepreneurs. I think that was the shift from like, okay, we're going to do this, maybe do this, to we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just kind of pushed us over the edge.
Absolutely. And also, one of the benefits that we had was like Twitter was almost like this fertile soil for the podcast. And what I mean by that is a lot of people start shows and then they're confused as to like why the show is not growing.
Yes.
And it's like, well, there's no distribution vehicle pushing anyone to listen towards your stuff.
Yeah.
And so it could be a combination of different things, but we had this like really engaged audience that was probably 50,000 plus at the time. So we would record our podcast and then we would just very simply organically post that to X. And then our followers on X would be like, oh, I want to hear the way that these guys speak. I've only ever heard them write. Let me hear them speak too. And then also where Twitter was so valuable, it was like Twitter is still, it's the best networking tool that's ever existed. I think it ever will exist. And we were having so much fun experimenting with like just different combinations and ways to get guests that we dreamed of on the podcast. Like, hey, Harry's going to DM this guy. Hey, Brett's going to comment on this one guy's post, and the likelihood that he'll see it is actually way higher than Instagram and some of these other platforms. And like, boom, boom, boom. We put together our dream list of 50 plus podcast guests, and we were just chipping like one by one. And it was like a dopamine hit every single time. And we've talked about this many times on the show before, but so many people just underestimate the power of like very politely asking for what you want. And a lot of times that person might reciprocate, especially for something like a podcast, like just going about it the right way, throwing in a sentence or two that really shows why you're invested in having that guest on the show and that you've really done your research before. And our hit rate was always very, very high doing that.
Dude, you're making me think about just some of the creative ways that we started to reach out to people, try to engage with people. I mean, we got Mark Sisson on the show because I was like, all right, dude, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm ordering a pair of his Paluvas, and I'm going to post about the Paluvas, tell him how much I love the product, because I've told you this a million times, but I've got a little bit of a foot issue from wearing cleats my entire life. So I'm like, all right, man, I need these shoes anyways. I'm using these Vibrams. Let me throw these out and get the Paluvas. So I get the Paluvas and love them. I'm walking around Austin with these new shoes on, these toe shoes, and end up tweeting at Mark saying, hey, man, these shoes are awesome. We'd love to have you on the podcast to talk about them. He responds, and we, lo and behold, a month later, he was in Austin. We have him on the show, and we were crossing off our dream guest right there. And that was within the first 6 months of the show. Was it 6 months? No, that was probably a year.
Later.
That was a year.
Yeah.
First year of the show. I mean, we had our dream, literally the guy that we identified as the guy that we wanted. This was the guy that we wanted on the podcast from the beginning, and we ended up getting him on the show within a year, which is really cool.
Yeah, there's just like this constant tinkering and experimentation with like how you can get people's attention on social media, and it's the only time where we're all connected. Like you can put out content and tag someone, and there's some likelihood or some possibility that they can actually see it and engage with you.
Yeah, 100%. So we start the podcast. Month 2 is absolutely incredible. I think we're just kind of in this lost creative pursuit. You're working your corporate job, recording 2, 3, 4 podcasts a day, recording on the weekends. I'm trying to figure out how to edit, try to make clips. We're just like putting stuff out there, right? This is a full sling. And eventually we end up going from, because at the time when we started the podcast, we're doing everything virtually. Mm-hmm. You were in your San Diego apartment. I remember as clear as yesterday. You were, had that nice sunny glass window, floor to ceiling windows, and I was cooped up in my Austin dungeon.
Yeah,
and there was a turning point where you moved back to Austin, and then we decided, hey, let's start doing an in-person podcast, and that was a turning point for us in the show because we kind of got, again, that taste of, wow, having somebody in the room with you is a totally different experience.
Yes.
I mean, I remember virtual podcast. You and I would have a script of the podcast. This is before AI or anything. You and I are like putting together like these long lists of questions for all these guests that we're having on. And we're going, all right, you take this one, I'll take this one, you take this one, I take this one. And we developed this kind of natural cadence of how we were going to ask questions, which questions we were most interested in, which ones we gravitated to naturally. And then it was like kind of like, all right, time for the big leagues. Let's get some people, real people, butts in seats. Yeah, what do you remember about that time period?
Yeah, I think that would be encouraging for people to remind you that we had so much imposter syndrome or like fear, or at least for me, like fear of being found out, that we legitimately had a script to the point where it was like, Harry's going to press record and then he's going to say, hey, Brian, how's it going? And then the guest was going to respond, and then Brett was going to say the next thing, and then Harry was going to lead off into the first question. Like it was that regimented out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you really want to like get a good laugh in, go listen to one of our early episodes. Actually, maybe not, maybe don't. But but yeah, we had it so scripted to the point where it was like robotic, but it really did help us kind of just find a cadence. And, you know, I still think like starting a podcast is always like, there's some level of
definitely,
you know, all right, here we go, we're starting. And it's like, you just have to like start the conversation.
Definitely.
But, you know, I think that it is encouraging, you know, going from, I mean, we didn't know the technical side of the podcast. Mm-hmm. We still are figuring out how to do the technical side of the podcast and bring on the right people to help us figure it out. But it's like, you know, that's one aspect of it. The one thing that we do know how to do is like reach out to guests, build a relationship, have good conversation. Mm-hmm. And like that we felt confident in. But even designing the conversation so that you could do it virtually where it didn't sound too choppy was a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, how the graveyard for founders or potential podcasters or creators that never get started because they just over optimize on everything is crazy. Like I've helped consult with so many people that, you know, they're the perfect recording software and the perfect microphone, and they're just worried about all these things, and like they still haven't gotten episode 1 off. Yeah. And I think this should be encouraging too. Like first 150 episodes were shot via Zoom with the stock Mac camera video camera on both of our computers without a microphone. Edited like
in iMovie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like you were in a... Dude, I've listened to an old episode. We need to go back through and enhance the audio. The audio could use some love. Yeah, we just use the mics on our laptops. Mm-hmm. But it is exactly what you're talking about. It's a true testament to just get going, just build the momentum. People still listen to the podcast. And have you ever heard this analogy about the two potters, the two guys? There's two guys who make pots. One guy, over 30 days, he only makes one pot. Then you have another guy who makes 30 pots. He makes one pot each day. And the goal at the end of it is to make the perfect pot. Mm. Which guy has the better pot by the end?
30 pots?
30 pots. And that's what we did with the pod. I truly believe that's the right philosophy with a podcast. At least for someone who like, you know, is trying to figure it out, doesn't necessarily know what direction they're fully going in, which I think is exactly kind of the camp that we were in. We were like, we want to meet a lot of people. We want to get our message out there. But like directionally, it just feels so far away to get to where we feel like we want to kind of be.
Yes.
Like, I don't even know if we would have said back then, like, do we want to have like a Joe Rogan style podcast, or do we want to have like a Tim Ferriss style podcast, or like a Huberman style podcast, or do we even want to do this for more than 6 months? And it's like quickly become our mission, but I think we needed to like test some stuff out beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reps and iterations build confidence. And speaking of that, to get back to your earlier question, like what was the feeling like recording the first episode in person? I remember following Kyle Kingsbury for a long time, and that was the first guest that we'd ever had on. And so he followed me, DM'd him, asked him to come on the show. He said yes. He said, let's do it at, you know, Aubrey's Ranch in Texas. We were like, this is incredible.
That literally felt like the World Series.
Absolutely. And he had the setup, so we didn't have to get the setup or anything. He had the cameras and the microphones. And I just remember us being ready to record. And it felt like I didn't even know what to say or what to do. I was so nervous. And I felt, at that point, I felt so good over Zoom, where I felt like I could pretty much record with most people. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is completely different just navigating an in-person conversation, even though it's the same show, but in-person or virtual is an extremely different experience.
It really is. Because, I mean, even with us, it's just like, I think we probably don't give ourselves enough credit in terms of our, just like the amount of reps that we've gotten in over the last 3 years. And in person, you really do need to have a good read on just like how to like navigate the conversation, how to like go deeper if you think someone's like not giving you the full answer and like you want to get more depth from them on something, like how to actually take a question a step further.
Yep.
How to leave space in a conversation for like, you ask a good question and then you have a follow-up question. So it's like you're dealing with this co-host dynamic. There's so many little things that you just don't even really think about when you're doing the podcast in person that, I remember it took us a while to kind of find our cadence, and we never really had like a super comfortable setup, like until we were recording out of the Bitcoin Commons, which was incredible. But like even, before that, it was like kind of on the road with this janky mic setup. I'm thinking about like our conversation with Sam Moffat at Shirt Tail Creek Farm. It's like we just have this like little audio adapter.
Mm-hmm.
We have a camera that's, recording from the side, and then we have these like janky headsets that we're speaking into. And it's like not necessarily the most comfortable setup to have a good conversation, but looking back, I mean, those combos, think about like our conversation with Adam Curry. What a legendary moment that was for us, just being able to like sit down with him for like 2 hours and just have a combo.
Yeah, I remember there were like when we first had those headsets, before we really optimized our experience, we were going out to the guest a lot of the time to make it as easy as possible for them.
How much fun was that?
It was so much fun. It just felt like you were on this like never-ending road trip and the excitement of going out there. And Adam Curry was a big guest for us for a number of different reasons. Like obviously the respect and the reverence over the guy that created podcasting.
Yeah.
And he's just such an amazing person. But what I was going to say was, I remember the audio wasn't great with him. There were a few other shows, but what was almost more important than the episode was like the connection, the relationship that you build with that guest.
100%.
That matters way more. That materializes down the road in ways that you can't even see.
Especially with a lot of the people that we were having on the show being from Austin. I mean, what a unique experience having follow-up relationship with someone like Adam Curry, who, I mean, he's invested a lot into our relationship for somebody who otherwise, like, why Adam Curry would spend, a dinner with us is like, he's like doing his thing. He's comfortable doing his thing. And he's just like such an incredible guy that he wants to invest into younger guys and be on their show and willing to, hear us out and hear all the questions we have. And he like keeps up with us, which is really cool. So I think like that was a really big turning point. I think just like those moments of us going out to guests, there was something really fun about the experience of it not being like us not having a studio, us not having it all perfectly worked out, and them just like them being willing to like work with us and for it to not be some like overly produced thing. Like now I look at a lot of podcasts that are being made, and it's like there's like basically two camps. There's like the gritty, hey, we're gonna do a virtual setup and it'll look good. We're gonna do it on Riverside. It'll look great. And then we have another one where it's like it looks like a movie, like it's being shot, in 20K, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the production quality. It's like it's insane. So there's something fun about it, kind of just being like, hey, we're just two guys trying to figure this out. We got a little audio recorder. I don't even know what it is. I don't even really know how it works, but plug our mics in here and it records, and then we just like press record on the camera and hope for a great conversation.
Yeah, your little brother, a lot of times, shout out Reagan, he was like our producer for a lot of this stuff, just helping to make sure that the cameras were properly recording and the mics were set up. But to your point as well, I think people really underestimate the potency of just youthful energy and passion and how how just compelling that is to a lot of people. Just seeing, it doesn't even matter the field that you're in, but just seeing this like youthful energy going towards the thing that they believe their life's mission to be. It's extremely compelling, and people are like you'd be surprised at how many people want to help those people that are youthful and they're passionate and they're just going after the thing. And I think one of the things that we were trying to capitalize on is because we were really just trying to continue to punch above our weight with the guests that we were getting, which is something that I think you and I are both really proud of, especially those early days. And then how do we take the reasons for someone to say no off the table? Like someone like Adam, who's in Fredericksburg, that's an hour and a half to get into Austin. We had met him once. We had a good conversation. He was still kind of learning about us. We're like, dude, we'll just drive out to your house and we'll bring a janky little setup and we'll buy all the equipment and just figure it out. And like, how do you just like and that's a good lesson for any aspect of business. If someone that you're trying to work with or build a relationship with, how do you take those reasons for them to say no off the table?
Yeah. Don't give him a not in a aggressive way, but don't give them a choice. Just make it as hard for them to say no as possible.
Definitely. Like Taylor Collins from Epic Bar and Force of Nature. He's obviously like a hero of ours.
That was one of the best conversations ever.
Yeah. And when we first went to that Rome Ranch Bison Harvest, we were like, he was just like one of those guys where like, I think he was a top 3 guy. He was up there with Sisson where Harry and I just said, we need to get this guy on the podcast. And him and Katie are, they have this beautiful life out in Fredericksburg at their ranch. And they're private people, and we were able to be like, hey man, we'll just come out to your ranch and we'll do a virtual podcast. At that point, this was pre Adam Curry. We hadn't even bought podcast equipment yet. So by the grace of God, our buddy CJ had a full virtual equipment set up and he came out to us, took off work, and helped us set this thing up. So shout out CJ.
Shout out CJ Fenley. What a legend.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's one of the cool things about Austin, just getting here, and I don't, it's just like, it's hard for me to decide for whether it's Austin or just the entrepreneurial scene in general, but like the willingness to help out. Like he was like, yo, I'm there. I'm going to help you set up the cameras. I'm going to bring the equipment. And he was there, dude. And honestly, that was like a massive episode for us. I look back and, look at that episode as like one of the most important ones that we recorded at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day.
Absolutely.
Dude, it's crazy to think about how much, things have changed since we started the podcast. Like 3 years ago, we were entirely different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like our show and the topics that we talk about reflect that a lot.
Definitely.
Like there was a period where I feel like we had a lot of founders on. We talked a lot about entrepreneurship. We've now started to talk a lot more about our faith and our faith journey and just how that's formed us. And it's cool thinking about the things that have formed us. We really haven't like some other people's podcasts. I think about like, not to knock anyone, but like Max Lugavere or like some of these other health and wellness influencers. It's like they just stayed committed to one angle, and I feel like we've kind of willingly just like let there be some creative drift that could be at like our own demise to some extent. So like I could totally hear someone say like, yeah, that's like not that smart. Like you didn't stay in the category that you guys grew in. But I do just think we have both been on this really unique journey of like the show kind of started on accident. And then we also started Noble, and we've both been deepening in our faith in ways. And I think those are probably the 2 topics that have been incorporated so much more heavily. And I'm curious to like just hear from your standpoint, like just the change that's happened like through the show. Like what have you experienced as just a man? Like how has the show changed you?
It's a really good question, man. I would say I think I'm still trying to, like if I'm being fully transparent, I'm still trying to find my footing with the podcast and where we can take this thing, because the health and wellness space since we've started has just become unbelievably saturated the last couple of years, which is incredible. Like this alternative health movement has grown from being this fringe thing to like probably being the catalyst as to like why the election materialized the way that it did, which is so incredible. And when we started the show, there was this very clear void of being the informed consumer that's giving out like simplicity of information. And I actually think that is like, it's kind of rounded back to being like, I think that actually that voice is probably more important than ever before. Like just that simple voice, like helping people pull really big levers. But, a lot of the content that we were so focused on in the beginning, I'm not as passionate as I used to be. And I think there's with creation, there's like almost 2 ends of the spectrum, where one is you can just pick your lane and that just is your lane until the day that you die, and you just stay consistent and people know you for that thing, it's probably the easiest path to grow. And I have so much respect for those people. And there's also these creators that just continue to evolve and shift into new interests, and they just like pull their audience along for the ride. And I think that's the arc in the chapter that we're on right now. But I mean, man, we've probably used the term that the podcast has been the engine to everything that we've done like 10,000 times since we started the show, because it's so true. There's just something about sharing your thoughts through a microphone onto the internet with people that you want to sit down with. Like, the serendipity and the opportunity that just comes from that is amazing. Like, there's so many things that I'm proud of because of this show, but like, I remember just nerves and uncertainty and ability to speak and hold conversation and build relationships, and the opportunities that it's unlocked. Like, it's been, it's really been the catalyst for everything. And so I just have so much in reverence and respect. And episodes like, honestly, the most fun that I have is honestly just when we're just kind of sitting down and just chopping it up about life, almost like a vlog style content. We go back to what you said before around create the way that you like to consume. I love vlog style content. And I think it's very easy to have imposter syndrome and say to yourself, well, like, what learnings do I really have to share that could be valuable for people? And you underestimate the space that you're in, the adversity that you're experiencing, just being able to talk through those things and solutions that you were able to implement that helped you overcome some of that adversity, just how valuable that is for a lot of people. So,
dude,
yeah.
Well said. Yeah. I feel like, the humility and just being willing to evolve too, and know that, sometimes you do face seasons of, that thing working, and then you're just like ready for a new chapter, new season. And I think like what was unique about early on is like the early on niche alternative health space. It's like completely matured to the point where like everyone's kind of now just like saying the same things on repeat. And like, it just feels, I don't even know if saturated's the right word. It just feels kind of nauseating.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there is like a lot of like good information out there, but I feel like it's being communicated in a way that's like, it just is a lot. Like, it kind of makes me like, I just like don't really want to like, I don't want to like be involved with content like this. But I do like, the topics are still deeply like rooted and near to my heart, and they're important to me. But I just feel like we're kind of going through a season of like, man, there's just like a lot of kind of just people getting involved and making the space feel a little bit like not as novel, which is fine. I think it's like part of the process and part of the experience.
Definitely.
There's been a few moments in the history of our show that I want to go back to. Number one was the road trip that we went on, and the road trip from Austin to DC. We've talked about this a few times on the show, but we decided to drive back. I just want to tell this story from the beginning because it's a great story for anyone who's just thinking about like, hey, let's just like do something fun, creative, and just like put a project together that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we're just gonna have a bunch of fun doing it. So you, me, Casey, our good friend, and his girlfriend Isabella, Sunny, my dog, pack up into my brother's car, and we drive from Austin to Washington, D.C. Over an 8-day period. We record 9 podcasts. We stop at Counterculture Farms in East Texas, which is an incredible farm run by Austin Dillon. And then we stop in Bluffton, Georgia to record a podcast that was long overdue with Will Harris, the legend. And then we're leaving Bluffton, Georgia, and we're like, we're stopping in Nashville for one reason and one reason only, which is to record with Michael Chandler. And we're not totally sure if we're going to be able to record this podcast episode with him hours before we're supposed to record. Do you remember?
Yeah,
that whole experience?
the week before we left, we were sitting at a barbecue joint. It was you, me, and your brother Reagan, and I saw that Michael Chandler, who one of our favorite fighters, just unbelievable human being. He was working with the brand Carnivore Crisps, and we knew that like the road trip would kind of bring us through Nashville if we wanted to go that way. Like, how incredible would that be? Is there a chance that we could get Michael Chandler on the podcast? So I reach out to Carnivore Crisps. They're like, we can't intro you directly to him, but he's actually really responsive to his DMs. Send him a really nice message. He responds immediately saying like, yes, I'd love to do it. And then the problem is that literally from that point until the day before we were about to drive through Nashville, he didn't answer any of our other DMs. So we're literally sitting there being like, are we doing this? Are we not doing this? Well, we have to prep just in case he says yes. And then we sent him like one final DM, like 9 p.m. the night before, and he accepted it for like the next morning at 8 a.m. And also, we needed to fly out our videographer to do the audio
Jose,
video work.
Legend.
Because the studio we were recording at didn't have any of the audio and video.
Yes.
So we had to make the gut call of like, should we buy his flights or not? We don't even know if the guy's going to record it. Are we going to fly this guy out our videographer out to Nashville for nothing? And then by the grace of God, he responded, and just being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're going to record with him, and watching him like pull up out of that black Escalade, one of our favorite athletes of all time, shaking his hand, sitting down with them. I was nervous. I remember being really nervous for that episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because you had watched so much of his career and just knew the caliber of person he was.
Yeah, and just like just the feeling of like sitting across from him with microphones on, hey, I want to be able to pull a great interview out of this person and not be like a carbon copy of all the other podcasts that he's done, just like that internal pressure,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking back, it would be so easy for us to just feel like we have no reason to be in that room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which we realistically, we probably didn't have any reason.
Yeah.
I mean, we were less than a year into the show,
Mm-hmm.
had recorded a lot of good podcasts, but I mean, for the most part, it was still kind of like transitioning from like, man, you guys are like just kind of piecing this thing together.
Yes.
So yeah, that was such an eye-opening experience too. Just, I mean, that's literally someone that I've stayed up until 1 a.m. watching him fight. Like
Yes.
I've stayed up late to watch him fight, and now I'm sitting there in this beautiful studio in Nashville, getting ready to have like a 2-hour conversation with him about all of like his fighting career, his faith, his relationship with his wife, his family, like adopting his kids. Like there were so many layers to that conversation where I was like, man, like this is like one of the coolest people that we could possibly get on the show.
Yeah.
Like he's just lived such a cool life.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where you're like where you just say to yourself humbly, you're like, we're doing the damn thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
we recorded with Michael. We recorded with Robert Breedlove. That was the second
Breedlove,
time coming on the show.
Yeah.
Dr. Brittany McGettrick, who was like, that was a sneaky, incredible episode.
One of the best.
She's amazing.
Dude, one of the best.
And then we drove up a little bit further to Shenandoah.
Polyface Farms, Joel Salatin.
Legend.
Yes.
And then
that was the second time we recorded with him, which was really cool because the first time we got so much good feedback on that first episode with Joel Salatin. And that guy, I mean, he's a prolific writer. He's an amazing farmer. He's a complete rebel, and he's pushed back against the big food and just, corporations getting into food and making it more difficult for farmers to actually have a voice and do their thing to make people healthy. And he's done an amazing job like pushing back and creating a voice for farmers. And so sitting across the table from him in person, that for me was like, I can't believe we're actually sitting here. Like,
Definitely.
And Will, I mean, dude, that conversation with Will was so cool.
Yeah.
Him, afterwards saying, complimenting us and just saying, that was one of my favorite conversations. And I don't think he was just, inflating our egos, or I don't think he was just talking to talk. And it was just like, man, this is such a cool experience. That 8-day period, the people we got to talk to was so incredible.
Yeah. Well, like, to be blunt, I mean this in a humble way, like what he said, he directly said, he was like, I've been on all these massive podcasts. I was on Rogan's podcast a couple months ago. He goes like, you guys are just as good as interviewing, and I enjoyed this podcast just as much, if not more. And obviously, like, we made the intention to actually go out to his ranch, which was really important because you truly see the magic of White Oak and just see how comfortable he is. We interviewed him at the Pond House, which is this awesome space that you can actually stay at White Oak, which is where him and his wife lived in the 70s, right when they had first gotten married. But like, just these like magical moments that just reaffirm you as like, first time founders and podcasters of like, all right, we're in the game. Like, we can be just as good as any of these other people. We just have to keep going.
Totally. And I remember,
you almost forgot the SD card.
Almost forgot the SD, dude. I mean, that would have been like the worst thing ever. Ended up finding it. Posted it like 4 months late.
But we
Praise
did.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You would have literally killed me. Dude, but then I remember we had like Casey recording us like beforehand on like this camcorder that he had. I remember seeing this video. I think it was like buried on YouTube of just you and me sitting on the couch, like pre or post podcast. And it looked like someone's like middle school project when they first invented camcorders, just like just so poorly done. Like no thought about execution at all. But it honestly, like looking back, it made me really appreciate it because we were just like, dude, let's just try to like capture this, try to like grit through it and just make it happen on our own and do like piece together something.
Yes.
And so, yeah, dude, I truly think like that trip was transformative for us and such a cool creative project to do with you as we're like really kind of getting our grips on the show. And you had just about moved back to Austin at that point, I think.
No, because we were living in Bastrop at that point.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. And then we finished it with Dr. Brooke Miller.
Yes. And Joe
Manaply on their ranch in Virginia, which was unbelievable. Had an incredible dinner with them, 2 amazing podcasts. That family, they're the best family. Like Matt, Amanda, Dr. Brooke, his wife, Joe, like they're literally the best people.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about just like so much intensity in 8 days too. Like I remember I had reached out to Carnivore Bar and wanted to do like a 7-day Carnivore Bar fast. So I ate only Carnivore Bars for the whole entire road trip.
Did you actually though?
I did.
You didn't cheat at all.
Dude.
That's incredible.
Only Carnivore Bars. And so I remember when we were going to the Michael Chandler interview, I was in such a deep state of ketosis from being these for only eating Carnivore Bars because they're so fatty.
Yes.
Dude, I was like, I don't know. I felt like I was like seeing through the walls. Like my mind, my headspace was just so wild.
And you drove every mile of that trip. You drove the entire way from Austin, Texas, all the way up to Virginia. 8 days. It was unbelievable.
Passport guy.
Man, I just remember thinking it's hard to like there are these moments that just feel like this like a time capsule almost, just like from the start to the end of that trip. And just like seeing so much of the country too through that, and just the conversations that we had, and then just going home and resetting for Christmas break for a couple weeks, and then heading back to Austin to like continue the work. It was, it's like just bringing up so much emotion as I'm just talking about it.
Yeah. Okay. And so kind of at the same time, like something amazing happened where we go, and this is kind of tying a story back. We were talking about Adam Curry earlier. We were fortunate enough to go out to Adam Curry's house for dinner. The next day he's on Joe Rogan. He happens to shout us out on Joe Rogan's podcast. The Meat Mafia gets shouted out on Joe Rogan. And you and I are sitting there in the Bastrop house. I think both of our phones like blew up. They're like,
yes.
Yo, you guys just got shouted out on Joe Rogan. Mm-hmm. And you and I were just like, what? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's I don't know how to describe the moment, but you're like, it's like the New York Yankees of podcasting. You know what I mean? Like it's and we had dinner with him and his wife Tina the night before, and they're literally the most hospitable, incredible people. Their marriage is amazing. Their walk with the Lord is amazing. They're just very good, like honestly, like mentors and role models to us. And we just shout out Adam and Tina. They're the best people. And I remember when we had dinner with him, because he was always very passionate and so helpful and like really interested in the stuff that we were doing, which always was such a confidence boost, being like, I can't believe Adam is so supportive and really believes in our vision.
Yeah.
And there's always
to help us, and like the way he would tell us stories, it wasn't like self-aggrandizing where it was like, look at all this stuff. It was kind of just like him letting us like peer through his eyes, like what he's done and what a future in like podcasting can look like.
Yes.
You know, I feel like it was always coming from this place of like mentorship and inspiring us.
Definitely.
Such a cool guy.
Yes. And I think that was probably maybe his 4th or 5th appearance on Rogan, because they just hit it off in the middle of COVID, and he had Adam on the show all the time. And so of course in the back of your mind, you're like, well, we're doing some pretty interesting stuff in the health and wellness space. Adam's really immersed himself in it. We just had dinner with him. You know, maybe somehow like that would that would come up in the conversation. You would literally never say that to him at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like in the back of your mind, you're obviously thinking about like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's about to go on Joe's show the next day.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, that had happened, and that was definitely a surreal moment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got looped into your ulcerative colitis story.
Yeah, he botched the story a bit, which is totally fine.
No, it's all good.
So we essentially both had bleeding rectums on Joe Rogan's podcast, blasted to 10 million people probably.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember sitting in the kitchen in Bastrop, like watching that, because there was a lot of different things happening at that time. And I remember at the time, what's the AI tool called? There was an AI tool that had just launched, and I was just like obsessing over it. And I just remember doing work in this AI tool for like hours, or for like an hour or two in the morning. And then you, I think, heard about that happening. You heard that, hey, bro, we just got shouted out on Rogan, and we go listen to it and we watch it. And I think both of us were just pretty much like, I can't really believe that this is actually happening.
Yes.
Which, you know, I think as you're going through the process, it's just so exciting, like thinking and looking back at these moments that, you know, kind of just establish your faith in what you're doing and solidify like, all right, you know, there's some legitimacy to all the different trips that we've gone on, you know, traveling to Idaho to speak at a Bitcoin conference about beef, traveling to Jason Rick's ranch in Colorado to talk about health, and going to all these different obscure events that ultimately led into us like, just like, making something happen, which was, I would look back at that period as like so much fun.
Yeah, I remember thinking to myself, because that was like early-ish 2023.
Yeah.
Thinking to myself like, man, like two guys off the couch started this thing a little over a year ago, and then, you know, a year later we're getting mentioned on Rogan's podcast. Like, you know, what else is capable, and anyone with the right vision and the right intensity and the willingness to sacrifice, like what we can do is pretty amazing.
Totally. All right. One other memory that I wanted to bring up was your ability to get guests is incredible. But the one that still to this day I'm amazed at is Adrian Grenier, the actor from Entourage. Vinny Chase. So we meet Vinny Chase out at Rome Ranch for the first time. My younger brother Reagan is in the middle of eating his first bison testicle, and he looks to his right, and Vinny Chase is standing there.
And he didn't know who he was because Reagan's 25. So at
the time he was like 22.
Yeah, so he's the generation that didn't really grow up watching Entourage.
Yeah.
But if you're like really like 29, 30 and older,
literally anyone with
over
a pulse
Entourage.
should know the show Entourage.
Yeah. Yep.
But we're at a Rome Ranch, this amazing property that our two friends own, and there's like this bison harvest going on, and this really cool experience that we're all getting to be a part of. And lo and behold, Adrian Grenier's there, and I remember him, you know, seeing him being like, "Whoa, this is like crazy that, you know, we're kind of like just getting started. We're at an event like this, really cool, really powerful, solidifying our faith in what we're doing again." And then he's like getting up to leave, and I think somebody said, "Hey, you gotta like meet the Meat Mafia guys. They're doing stuff that you'd be interested in," because Adrian had just started his farm out in East Texas, and he's like, "Yeah, you know, like let's do something. That'd be great."
Mm-hmm.
But then you like, I just remember you, like the way you are, the way you're wired. It's like, once that yes is said, you're like, all right, like I'm going to make sure this happens, which is such an incredible trait. And I think like it's led to a lot of success for us. But that story in itself was amazing. Just, I don't know. I think about that. Like such
I could put on a full play from episode 1 to the finale of Entourage and recite every single line. I've probably seen it like literally 5 times. It's one of those shows. It's 25 minutes. It's so entertaining. There's so much heart. Like, it's just such a magical show.
What's your favorite line?
And there's so many good lines. Anything Ari Gold drama said, probably not politically correct. Yeah. So I won't say it. But
the one that always gets me laughing, you definitely can't say on the show.
My fear has always just been, I genuinely believe that we all get opportunities where you're in the right room with the right people. And I absolutely despise those moments where I'm in the right room with the right people and I just don't take advantage of the opportunity that's there. And like I had heard that he had really immersed himself in the regenerative act space and had left Hollywood and said no to acting and had really just planted roots in Central Texas. And so like, yeah, we get introduced and, we threw out the concept of him going on the podcast. So just got his number and, we were exchanging texts a few times and he was another guy where he was a little bit hard to pin down. And then he was like, hey, I'm going to be downtown at this time tomorrow. Can you do that for an episode? And it was like, I remember we had a full plate that day, moved everything around, got Jose again to be able to commit to be able to do that. He canceled a big doctor's appointment for that. So shout out to him. Just, he's absolute legend, like was the lifeblood of the show.
Truly.
At that point. And sitting down with Vinny Chase from Entourage, and it was a pretty damn good conversation.
Dude, that convo was incredible. I remember just being stunned that, like, we're talking to Vinny Chase and he's talking about
semen retention.
He's talking about semen retention and celibacy and this whole new life that he had. And it's like, this guy is portrayed on, like, he's portrayed in Entourage as the guy who's hooking up with every girl. He's the biggest playboy there possibly is. And then he comes on the Meat Mafia podcast and he's talking about celibacy and semen retention and all the things. And that clip went nuclearly viral.
Yes.
It was so funny, just like sitting there and you're like, wow, this guy is just seemingly living an entirely different life than what you would expect.
Definitely. I actually remember we were in Colorado. We had flown out to Colorado shortly after to record with Eric Hinman. That was the first time we'd ever met Eric. And I remember seeing you in the car, just like you were like tinkering for like an hour and a half on your phone. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing over there? Like, cause you're always tinkering and you're so good at creating content pieces and stuff. I'm like, I know he's working on something. And it was that clip where he talked about semen retention. And you invited him to collab on the clip, and the thing went nuts. It was the most viral piece of content he'd ever shared. There were other accounts that talked about semen retention on YouTube that repost it, that have millions of views from that episode. And then the Entourage creator, Doug Ellen, they have a big podcast about Entourage with like Kevin Dillon. And I remember them talking about, I remember listening to an episode and they were talking about that clip and they brought it up to Adrian Grenay when he went on the show.
Yeah.
Like that was like a focal point of it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is so crazy that we're like kind of like poking and making a dent. I don't know.
Yeah. We're like in the atmosphere of, things that are happening in that world, which, it's like, I don't really know anything about any of those shows, but it's like these people are attracting a lot of attention with like the things that they've done. They've had established careers in Hollywood. They're talking about cool things and they're bringing up the fact that Vinny Chase is on the Meat Mafia podcast talking about semen retention. That's wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just I remember like just sitting in that front seat being like, this clip is going to be so good, and just like not being able to speak because I was just so focused on making that.
Yes, and it worked.
Yeah, it's wild, man. It's been such a fun ride. I feel like we could probably talk all day about all the different stories. Are there any stories that stand out to you as just like, I don't know, highlights of the podcast that people maybe haven't heard about?
Man, I think it's more so just a feeling of, I think a lot about this Deja Vu quote where he says either, like for the things that you want, either increase sacrifice or decrease desire. Mm. And I think a lot about like just the yeses and the things that we were willing to say yes to, like the coffee meetings, the dinners, the events, probably 30 plus trips all over the country, spending thousands of dollars, buying tickets, just under this this overall vision of like, if we just keep putting ourselves in the right room, like we know we have something special, we just have to meet the right people and like just kind of pull them into our vision and our world, and it's gonna like just help propel everything forward, and we're gonna have what we want. And I'm trying to think if there's any stories. It's just more of that feeling though. It feels very rustic and it feels very bootstrapped, and it makes me feel proud too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, likewise. I feel like what's coming to mind for me too is just like this visualization of, the last 3 years it's been the most fun, the most challenging, the most sacrifice that I've ever had to make personally, from both a personal reputation wise, just putting ourselves out there, you know, being bold, being courageous, trying to make something from nothing. And then also from like a financial standpoint, from a comfort standpoint, just the most sacrifice that I've ever made in my life. Not saying that to like, you know, toot my own horn, but it's just like, or toot our horns, but it's just like, it's this period of looking back and being like, man, we kind of went for it, man. And like, it hasn't worked out perfectly, but I do think that the visualization that comes to mind is just roots being developed, like a root system, a bamboo root system being developed, and how long it takes those roots to be established before they actually start growing up. And I still feel like you and I have this feeling that we were just kind of, we're like in this laundry machine, just like this little pearl that's being like just softened and perfected. And I think that craft of just wanting to be perfected and being patient and wanting your artwork and your creative output to just be right before it has that moment of like, all right, like something big happens. And I think we've had amazing big things happen on the show, but I feel like we've just been in this period where we're being formed.
Yes.
And I think that period of being formed is just, it's so exciting because it really shows that, you know, there's just constant levels, constant iterations, constant growth that is being compounded and stacked on itself. And you see the moments where you're like, it feels like we're going to be able to stack a chip here. And it's like not going to feel like a crazy, you know, a crazy thing to envision, you know, being on this big show or, you know, having this big guest here in the future. Like, I think like we're kind of establishing, you know, what the next step is going to be, but I do really feel like we're like really ready to take off, which is exciting.
Yeah. There's a feeling in the air of like gearing up for like a second big arc. And like, let's be clear, right? Like the show right now, it's still like small, medium-sized show. Like I'm not the guy that can tell you how to grow your podcast to 100,000 downloads a month or 500,000. Like we have never done that before. But I think the premise of this podcast is like just kind of connecting the dots and putting the puzzle pieces together of just like these anecdotes and stories of things that occurred the first couple of years of like our baby's existence to get it to this point that have really gotten us in the game where it's like you might even be flatlining in between your first and your second arc. But the fact that you're in the game to even be able to get to that second arc is so important, and that there's so many people that for whatever reason you create these artificial limitations or this resistance pops up and you never get into the game to begin with. So like hopefully this conversation is just a breath of fresh air, like just a reminder of like all these crazy scrappy things that we did and we just pieced it together and chipped away. And you know, I just hope that the person that listening to this just takes a little bit of something from it to like apply that towards like their own version of the Meat Mafia in your own life, whatever that looks like to you.
Yeah. Yeah. If it gives anyone any confidence, you know, you're listening to two guys who quit their corporate jobs to start a podcast about meat. So, or, you know, not meat anymore, but, you know,
yeah,
just go do the thing.
Yeah. But it's all been so worth it.
Doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great, man. I appreciate you coming on and, chopping up the old podcast stories with me and reminiscing about the past. I feel like this is a much needed conversation for us, just thinking about what we want to do in the future. And I really do hope that like we have a lot more of those individual podcasts where you sit down, you're looking at the camera. I'm not on the show. There's no guest. It's just Brett talking about a topic that you're passionate about. And then there's versions of that with me. And I do just feel like, yeah, for the betterment of the show, for the betterment of our own creative pursuit and energy, like there's going to be so much good stuff that comes from that.
Definitely, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you facilitating this. And I'm very excited.
I'm pumped. All right, brother.
God bless.
Peace.